best entertainment on the earth. Tune in for Comics with Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. I know some of you have at times gotten after me, although it hasn't happened in a while, just this Vincent or comment, or it can be yes and it can be no. And I get why that can be irritating and frustrating, all the rest. But it is also inherent to comics themselves, because there is one truth to comics, and this really was hit home for me in a thread that Exalted Speed did over on Twitter. There's a guy who you should follow. He's like this show, but smarter and with good information. And he does a really good job of researching and laying things out. But he did this thread on Thor, and he's asked the question: is Thor, a name or a mantle? And then he does this long thread where he goes basically through the entire history of Thor and the different Thors that have existed: Masterson and Betty Ray Bill and Jane Foster and Thor Girl, and I mean even just a bunch of different characters in the Thor legacy. And if you read all the way through this, and what's funny is kind of like the video with the Kathleen Kennedy, which was hilarious because there were several people in there who immediately went in and commented and clearly did not watch the video. My favorite was somebody who's like, hey, this title isn't real. It was fake. It's just talking about Jeff Johns, which indicated that person didn't even get to the part where he talked about the joke. But that's fine. But if you read through his entire thread, Speed's thread, talking about is Thor a name or a mantle, one thing comes out perfectly clear. Marvel has given you both answers over the years, pretty definitively. And this becomes the problem in comics, because if you're going to throw down based on canon, like, yep, this is canon, here it is, it was said in the comic book, the problem is that you've got in many of these comic books the same thing being said in opposite directions. Or rather, you can find canon panels, things written into the comic book that give you both sides of the argument. So what all that comes, and why does that happen? Well, for a lot of reasons. The editors aren't paying attention. You have an editor and a writer on a book, they're doing their thing, and then a new writer comes along with a new pitch, and they decide to put that in, they print it, and nobody is looking at the big picture. And in fairness, it would be hard, not impossible, and I think it would be worth trying to do it, but it would be it's difficult. At least I can go that far. If you are saying, keep titles, keep a comic consistent over the course of 50 odd years, 60 years, that's hard. That's a lot of comics. It's a lot of material. It's a lot to keep track of. The job isn't easy. It is doable. I mean, because the funny thing is there are plenty of people like Speed himself. Like, why wouldn't you hire Speed or Joe Corallo as another? Hire these guys as if not editors in your line, at the very least, hire these guys as, like fact finders, as people who are, going to help define what happens in a character's legacy. I mean, hire these people to be, the folks that keep your comic book on track. Like, that would be a very smart hire. It is possible to do the job, to keep everything in track. It's possible. Not easy, but possible. But Thor in particular, there's been pretty definitive statements that Thor is the character's name. Marvel has said this. It is Thor. Therefore, if Thor's name is Thor, Odin's son Thor, then Jane Foster coming around saying, I'm Thor now, doesn't work, because that's not her name. That's the mantle. So you can argue that side of it, and there are panels Marvel has published that prove it. However, there are also panels and stories Marvel has published that say that it's just a mantle, that it's not it's his name, it's not really his name, the actual Thor, the Thor character, the panel. Unfortunately, when you lay these things all out together, like Speed does, it starts to make very little sense, because you have so many different takes and so many different interpretations, and you have writers and editors who are kind of trying to adhere to the past, but not doing it very well. And it just becomes a convoluted mess. And so what it all comes down to is you decide. Yes, you, the reader. You get to, because who else is deciding? Nobody. So you kind of have to decide what makes sense, what doesn't. The only thing that you have to admit, and it's a bitter pill to swallow, And absolutely, there are plenty of people, and you will see them in the comments of this video, who will not admit it. You have to admit that the comic publisher, in this case Marvel, has given you both answers. They have provided an inconsistent message. If you're truly going to base your entire argument and everything else on canon, what was printed in a comic, you're going to find two panels that are contradicting each other. And it's going to be left to your interpretation of how one works. And some people are going to say, well, this one's newer, therefore it wins. And some will say, well, this one is newer, but it leaves a loophole over here, which means the old one still applies, and therefore. And I guess that is the fun of comics. I don't know about that, but it is impossible. I think that in many cases, and this is just my personal opinion, I think that trying to base an argument strictly off of canon, particularly when the comic is not when it conflicts itself on a regular basis, if you're trying to do it that way, you're wasting your time. And instead, I think your litmus test should be: is this entertaining? Does it make sense? Was this a good story? It's really the only thing you have to come back to. There aren't facts anymore because the facts contradict. So you're pretty much left with: is this story worth reading? Which is unfortunately subjective. It means your decision, your choice is going to be different from others, and that's goofy, but it is the way it is. That's there you go. So to get back to kind of what I said at the beginning, I know this irritates the hell out of people. They do not like my it could be this or it can be this answer, but it can. In a lot of cases in comics, like with Thor, it can. The stuff that we know for sure, well, for example, we know that during Jason Aaron's time on the title, the Jane Foster version of Thor outsold the Odinson version of Thor. Okay? Part of that was because it was a mystery, but them's the facts. However, if you want to take this argument to its logical conclusion, there were runs like Simonson's run of Thor that vastly outsold Jason Aaron's time on Thor, boy Thor and girl Thor, both. And Donny Cates' current version of Thor, his current run, is outselling the Jane Foster Thor, and that has Odinson. So if you're going strictly by a sales number, then in the last 10 years, the highest selling version of Thor is Guy Thor, written by Donny Cates. If you're going by Jason Aaron's run, Lady Thor was the highest selling. If you're going by all time, Simonson, and even before that, Kirby stuff, and like the stuff when it was on the newsstand, it was outselling all the Thor, outselling Donny Cates, outselling Jason Aaron, completely outselling them both. Every now and then, by the way, I start talking about Donny Cates, and my brain goes Nick Cage. I'll call him Nick Cage. I may have done that in this video already. I don't know. I don't know why. The two are really nothing alike, and Nick Cage is hilariously entertaining, and Donny Cates is Donnie. But anyway, I apologize if I slipped into that. I think the key here, though, is look, you're fighting a fool's errand if you're trying to go back on something that is subjective and something that is oftentimes changed from time to time. Unfortunately, it puts you in the position, however you're arguing it, to have to basically be proven wrong by another panel. There's a lot of people arguing right now that Thor, and here's the other part. I'm watching people, because of the Thor for Love and Thunder video that came out, I'm watching a bunch of people passionately argue for this is Thor the name, it's Thor the title, this is the real Thor, meaning the Jane Foster Thor. And I don't know why. I can't begin to get up the energy to care about it at the level that some of these people do. I don't understand. Full stop. I do not understand why people give a shit about this particular argument. We've seen Jane Foster Thor for a second in a trailer, and she will appear for, I don't know, less than 10 minutes in the movie. And does this transform or change your life in some way? I don't know. I'm seeing the same kind of argument of haha, they must have forced Chris Pratt to be in a gay relationship with Thor. Aha, that serves him right. I'm like, but he's super wealthy. He's a multi-millionaire living a massively successful life and is one of the more sought after actors in Hollywood right now. I mean, yeah, it shows him. They did the same thing when Al Ewing made Star Lord bisexual in Guardians of the Galaxy. It's like, yeah, this will teach him. And Ewing absolutely did that to Star Lord as a jab at Chris Pratt because of Chris Pratt's religion, I guess. It's like, haha, look what we did to your character that you're known for. How about that? You're bi. It's like, I mean, Chris Pratt gets to go home and sob into his giant piles of money and hot wife. But okay, whatever you're gonna do, own the right wing. Anyway, Canon, it's your friend and your enemy. There you go. Sorry. Thanks for listening.